Ready.
Great.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Read This Book podcast. I am your host, Stephen Duncan.
And I am your other host, Matthew Meadows.
And the ability to say one's own name within a sentence just never gets any easier.
No, it does not.
It never sounds more natural, no matter how hard you try, no matter how many casts you pod.
And you would think, Stephen,
Yep.
after 30 episodes of the Bro Read This podcast. Wait. Dang it. And you'd think, Stephen, after 30 episodes
Whoa!
of the Bro Read This Book podcast that we would know what we were talking about sometimes.
You know, we do know about the books that we talk about, mostly.
Sometimes I do not.
Definitely not our names.
Yeah.
And sometimes the name of our podcast that we've done 30 times now.
You know what's crazy? I was thinking about that today. We have been doing this for going on
2 years.
2 years. Man.
We're wrapping our second season shortly.
Yeah, very shortly
We've got just a handful of episodes to go.
Probably two or three.
Yeah, something like that. Because we'll have one more in October.
Yeah,
couple in November.
yeah, and then I don't know if
maybe like a finale in December.
Yeah,
early
December.
Yeah,
man, wow.
Yeah,
it's 2 years.
2 years.
What's been your favorite episode of this year? Do you have one?
The year I would. Oh man, I wish I had them like pulled up and in front of me.
You can do of the whole show too, if you like.
Of the whole show.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta say, it started getting significantly more fun when we went to
the in-person format. Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
But it was also interesting how much fun it was, even when we just started, and we were doing it, virtually.
Yeah,
I think we were still close enough to the pandemic era that doing it virtually, like. Not because we were isolating from each other, but it felt more natural.
Yeah.
Whereas now we're just so much more accustomed to doing things in person again. Not because but it was super fun in the beginning virtually. I do kind of look back on those times with a certain fondness.
Yeah. I think that we had some of our, not our best conversations. I think that some of the conversations that stick out in my mind as being ones that I really remember well were from those early episodes.
I think we were able
especially the Lord of the Rings
series
that we did.
I think we were able to get into the book conversations on a different level.
Yeah.
But the banter and the back and forth,
like
especially just kind of around the show and in the opening sections of the show, got way more just fun and poppy and light and
hold on, I'm about to sneeze. Can you distract them?
It's
gone.
Oh, come on.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll let you know if I need to do that again, though. That was great.
Leave you hanging.
Please don't.
You're gonna sneeze right into that mic.
I will not. Certainly. I will look away. What was I going to say? It's gone from my brain. No, it's not.
Just like
it's back.
Sneeze.
Hold on. Wait. Hold on. What I was going to say is, for those of you who don't know, the beginning of the show didn't really have a banter section. That was a new to this season of the show.
I would say,
having a specific topic that we wanted to talk about before we got into the book discussion. And I think that's really made it more fun for us. Made it feel more sustainable, I think. Because it's not just about the books. Like it is, but I mean, we talk about the books that we talk about on the show outside of the show as well.
Yeah.
So it's like for us to have like those conversations outside, and then also have like fun conversations about other topics that we maybe wouldn't just bring up in a normal conversation on the show. It is really fun for us, and I think hopefully fun for people to listen to as well.
Hopefully.
But yeah, man, wow, that coming up on 2 years. of doing this thing.
30 episodes.
Most podcasts don't make it past
6,
7, 6,
7,
6.5. Most people don't make it past 6.5 podcasts. That's real. You can look that up.
Yeah.
Exactly what I just said.
It's a real stat.
And for us to be doing it for almost nigh on 2 years, and have 30 episodes out, that's 30 books each.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Chopped the numbers down.
No, but we still talked about those books.
We talked about them, but that wouldn't count as. Oh, it would count as one each, I guess.
Because we both talked about
the same one. Yeah.
Yeah.
30 books each.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And we hope that you guys have enjoyed listening. For those of you who have been around for a while, thank you. For those of you who this is maybe your first episode, thank you as well. For those of you who clicked on the title of this video because it says Rings of Power in it, thank you as well. Hope you stick around.
There.
So that brings me to our topic of the day. And just to forewarn you here, there will be spoiler talk. I'll try to limit. Probably try to limit it a little bit. I will. But I don't want to get too deep into the actual inner workings of the show.
But we're not going to be guarded about keeping you from spoilers.
So if you want, just fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not going to take too long. We'll get into the books shortly, but if you want to just fast forward a little bit, if I remember, I will put a marker on the screen of the time that we start talking about the books right here. I have to do it because I said I would.
Let's go.
So if you want to skip to that time, that's when we start talking about our books of the episode. But yeah, let's talk about Rings of Power season 2.
Let's do it.
We have spoken about this ad nauseum in our friendship, and our real life, and we also had the beginning of 2 episodes ago where we talked about this. Our most viewed episode of the show, also our most disliked episode of the show.
Was it really?
Yes.
Wow.
So
we're really setting ourselves up for failure again.
Yeah. This was your idea.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear. I wanted to talk about it though. That season 2 markedly better than first season.
Significantly.
Yeah. A lot of the problems I had with season 1 seem to have been at least at the very least listened to by the showrunner.
Yes.
And has made for a more enjoyable show.
Yeah.
All around.
Yeah.
I think that the original characters that are in the show now, I feel a lot more connected to them. Arondir has become one of my favorite characters. I really hope they do more with him.
He needed a season to chill.
Yeah.
And just be cool.
I think having him as kind of the no shade to Bronwyn or whatever the other character was.
You're right.
I think having him be the main focus of that storyline with Isildur is really interesting. And now moving forward, those 2 characters have split off.
Yeah.
Isildur going back to Numenor, Arondir with the elves, with Galadriel, Gil-galad, and Elrond. Him having more of a focal point with the elves, I think will be really interesting. One thing I did kind of want to talk about, and I think we're kind of on the same page about this, is the Gandalf situation.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's not even that the execution was bad necessarily. I thought it was a little cheesy, the whole Grand Elf. Gandalf.
We gotta get you a
Gandalf.
A Gand. It's a wand. Yeah.
The whole that whole transition from Grand Elf to Gandalf. I was like, oh, okay,
Gandalf.
That's something. Yeah, that was a little clumsy to me. But outside of that, the execution of the character over the first 2 seasons, I don't have a problem with that as an origin story for Gandalf necessarily. It's not right, but they did fine.
Yeah.
I think it's just that it was a missed opportunity in that if you would have set that character up as a blue wizard, you could have done whatever you wanted with them within reason. You could have created your own wizard character without having to stack him up against someone that we already know everything about, and Gandalf is the wizard that we know the most about in all of Lord of the Rings.
I really just it's disappointing because it is a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't really know how you could refute that.
Yeah.
Like, I love Gandalf. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And like one of my favorite characters in Tolkien's Legendarium. I don't really want to see him again. Like, to be honest, like I just would rather have it have been somebody else.
Yeah.
Because you take a character so well loved, and I get the maybe the mindset of like we want to bring fans of the movies who have not read everything that Tolkien has written. We want to bring them into this show and have them have like a kind of guiding star in the show.
Yeah.
And that'll be Gandalf for them. And that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that there was a little bit more toward the side of the folks who are more, into it. And I think that him being Gandalf doesn't really change I really thought that if they announced that, I was going to be like, man, I don't want to watch this anymore. But it just didn't feel that way because I had really been enjoying the other things. Well, now, I will say, if they had announced that at the end of season 1, I would probably not have watched season 2.
Yeah, burn it down.
Yeah, honestly. Like,
that would have been a bad reveal for that point in time.
Yes.
I think at this point, Fall of Numenor happens soon. Right? If they still do their 5-season arc thing.
Happens next season.
Yeah. And then you set up like the Kingdom of Arnor.
Yeah.
Which is like Gandalf has huge ties to that in the source material. So I can see kind of generally where they might be taking that.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get I'm calling it now, you're going to get a reuniting of Nori and Gandalf.
Yeah.
It's going to be like near the Shire.
Don't get your hopes up, folks. The Harfoots are not going anywhere.
No, yeah. Like, I promise you, Gandalf is going to be the reason the hobbits are in the Shire.
Probably. And speaking on the Harfoots, no disrespect to the actors, I really think that they do a great job. They handicap the show.
Yeah.
Really badly.
Yes.
Not the actors. The whole story. The whole storyline.
Yeah.
If the show was Anatar Eregion, Adar, I really liked Adar. Rest in peace, Adar. Kind of, I guess that's fine. I don't really care, but it was kind of made me sad.
He's a good character.
He's a good character. Also, Joseph Malway, I think it was his name. Fantastic.
Yeah,
they did a great job recasting his role. And then like Isildur, and Arondir, and then Numenor. That's a great core of a show.
Yeah,
but having the stranger Gandalf and the Harfoots, doing this weird like pseudo fellowship thing did not land for me at all. How do you feel about Tom Bombadil?
Okay, so that was another one of the negatives. We've talked mostly negatives so far.
We'll get to the positives.
We have positives.
I think I have more positives than negatives.
I wanted to like Tom Bombadil so much. I just don't think they got it right.
It's my least favorite part of the show. Like outside of the Harfoots.
I just don't think they got the character execution correct. And I mean, just in how they wrote the character, the way that he was portrayed, like it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I think like Tolkien doesn't have a lot of variety in Tom Bombadil characterization. Like it's pretty.
The whole song that he sings is like he's a married fellow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
he was very somber.
There were like glimpses of this like jubilant character. But then he was like this pseudo spirit guide for Gandalf.
Yeah.
Weird choice.
Like, here's the thing. Tom Bombadil is not here to guide anyone to
Tom Bombadil
anything.
does not care.
He
is his defining trait.
Care. And they did not play up the not caring at all.
Let me tell you my favorite part of the show. Celebrimbor, full stop.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees.
Celebrimbor and Anatar. That story, fantastic.
Super well.
Charlie Vickers as Anatar / Halbrand / Sauron. Fantastic.
Yeah.
He is so good. He is creepy. He is like there was especially when he was like, there's a conversation that Celebrimbor and Anatar have about Anatar being a slave to Morgoth.
Yeah.
And he gives this really, really well done, really well portrayed monologue about how it was difficult. And he was like, I'm sorry that you, Celebrimbor, have brought this upon yourself, that you're making me do this. And Celebrimbor says, you truly are the great deceiver. You've managed to deceive even yourself.
Yeah.
And I think having the element of Sauron that we see as more human is a good choice for the show. And there are elements of that, I think, again, this might be a little bit off, but like parts of Sauron in Tolkien's Legendarium, he's really about order, very, very much order, and doing whatever it takes to get that order. And I think that him having those moments of humanity is his way of manipulating people to give him what he wants.
Well, and I think like there were so many moments, that was one of them. There were so many moments where he just gave off these perfect, like manipulative, like abuser type vibes, and had lines along those along that line, and that it just made it so creepy. And he would say something,
just skin crawl,
and yes, exactly. Here's something I would like to say to the haters. It is an adaptation. It is an adaptation based on the appendices, and while the appendices are fairly detailed about dates and time frames, they're also super compressed so that they give the most amount of backstory to the events that happen in The Lord of the Rings. And here's my thought that came to me as I was watching the finale. For every change they've made to the lore that is maybe not so great or twist things up a bit, they've made a choice that was very informed by the lore, that was very clever.
Balrog. That was awesome. Yeah. That was awesome.
That was the most metal thing I've ever seen in my life. It was amazing.
Yeah. The actor who played the older Durin is fantastic.
Yeah.
He was awesome. I agree. I 100% agree with you. My frustration lies in that some of the criticism doesn't seem to be coming from a place of like good faith.
No, they want to hate the show.
Yeah. So it's like that's my biggest frustration. If you don't like the show, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah. Like if like me, I wanted to love what they did with Tom Bombadil. And at the end of it, I was like, don't
like it.
They did it.
Yeah. I think if I could ask for one thing from people, it's just go into it understanding that it is not going to be what you 100% want it to be.
Yeah.
And there are going to be people who absolutely adore the show because they have no idea what you're talking about. And both of those things are okay. You can hate the show if you want, but don't like. I would just ask that people don't like ruin it for the people who do love the show.
You just have to be willing to take it for what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I like the show pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were some parts that I loved, some parts I really didn't like.
Yeah.
And that's just I'm okay with that. Like I am okay with that.
I don't need to adore it and have my life changed by an Amazon Prime TV show, regardless of the source material. At this stage of the game.
Yeah.
So I'm good with it just being a fun, entertaining show.
Yeah.
That comes from source material that I adore.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Should we talk about some books?
You want to talk about some?
Before we talk about some books, I do want to say, if you want to support the show, we do have a Patreon. $1 a month is all it takes to support us. For $1 a month, you get access to send us questions to talk about on the show, a newsletter each month, and we'll mention you by first name on the show. And I'll do that right now. Thank you, Freddie, Maggie, Stephanie, and Jeffrey. You are the light of our lives, and we love you so much. Yeah, so if you want to support us, that's a great way to do it. Another way to do it is we both have affiliate links for bookshop.org. If you like any of the books that we talk about here on the show, most of the time, if I remember to do it. There is a link in the description to those books on our bookshop pages. If you buy from bookshop.org, you can give a portion of that money to a local bookstore and a portion of that money to us. So it's super, super helpful. You don't have to do any of those things, but if you would love to, or if you would want to, we would love for you to do that. And it would mean a whole lot to us if you took the time to send us some money.
Thank you very much.
Yep. What are you talking about, Steven?
I'm going to talk about this guy.
You got to say the name.
Les Misérables. For those of you in the vid, if you're on the vid, it takes up about as much room in the shot as my face, because it's a very
large
book. This is 1,000 pages, and I'm not going to open the book and show you the pages, but it
would take a while.
Very, very tiny print, and they do not waste any space on that page, filling it up with that very tiny print. It is dense. This is the longest single book I've ever read in my life. And just before even getting into the book, so goal for the year, I had 2 of them. Read 100 books. I have finished 90.
Ooh.
So we're just trucking right along. Hopefully by the end of the week.
Still crazy to me.
I know.
It's unbelievable.
Hopefully by the end of the week, we'll have 91 and 92. Maybe 93. We'll see.
Get crazy.
Yeah. Getting wild.
Go wild.
But yeah, so that was one. And then 12 classics, 2 of them being like really dense, more difficult reads. First one was Brothers Karamazov, which I've already spoken about. The second one, I decided was going to be this one. I picked up this copy of Les Mis at the bookstore early in the year, like early spring.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, how crazy would it be if I could get through this behemoth of a book without it completely destroying all my goals?
Yeah. I'm glad you saved it to the end.
So my original idea, a few times a year, I take trips for work, like a week at a time. And obviously working all day, but then in the evenings, usually just have a few hours to kill.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, I would have a few hours of flight time, a few hours waiting in airports, and then a few hours every evening just that I could kill reading, because I'm usually just watching Netflix or something. So I was like, that's going to be when I do Les Mis. I went on my last work trip in July, and I was not ready.
Yeah.
As soon as I booked the trip, the first thought wasn't even like what I was going to be doing on the trip work related. It was, oh no, I have to read Les Mis now.
Yeah.
I just wasn't ready to do it yet, and I didn't. And I ended up not reading a whole lot during that trip at all.
Sometimes you just can't, man.
Yeah.
You just need to not. Relax your brain.
So I didn't do it then. But I just have gotten into a classics kick lately. Like there was Jane Eyre.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading East of Eden right now. A couple other really great classics.
Respect.
And I just like the spirit moved, And I was like, I think it might be time to try this. I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself. I was like, if I get burned out on it, if I need to do a lot of like audio, great.
Sorry, I just had a moment where I knocked my mic out of my hand. I don't know if you guys saw that. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
I just am having a moment.
But yeah, so I started it, and it was just one of those things where the timing was right, and my brain locked in with it, and I was like, let's go. And I think it was about a 2-3 week process to get through it.
Yeah.
It's 1,000 dense pages in physical form. It's over 60 hours of audiobook. Long one. So yeah, I'm just happy to have it accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether you read it or not, I just would be remiss if I didn't take some time to talk about the experience of reading it, which is what just happened, but also like some of the best moments of it.
Yeah, go for it.
And for context, if you hadn't pieced together, if you're a fan of the show, both of us have a bit of a background in musical theater.
Oh, the theater.
One of the greatest musicals of all time is Les Misérables, based on this book.
We actually met doing that show. Yeah,
oh,
I was in it, and you were working on you were doing tech.
What a great piece of lore!
Wow,
I always forget about that.
Put that in your book.
That's it right there.
Yep.
That's
how we met.
Yeah. So I bring that up because the plot of the show follows the plot of the book significantly closer than I expected it to.
Unlike Jekyll and Hyde.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, cut that.
I'll try. I'll try to remember to do that.
That drink of water.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like pretty much all of the major plot points are intact and executed in about the same way. Which is
no songs.
No songs.
Okay.
You could see where it came from.
Yeah.
But even like the plots of some of the songs or the content of some of the songs, like those remain intact in the story. It's just expressed differently.
Through text.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
My man.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I was amazed at how closely the two plots coincided. I never felt like I was lost.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. One thing that people bring up who have read it is that there are several very lengthy digressions that occur. So the famous one that people talk about a lot is like a whole long thing on the Paris sewer system. Yeah, because obviously it's building up to when Jean Valjean rescues Marius in the Paris sewer. But there are several chapters dedicated to describing the architect and builder of the Paris sewer system.
Fascinating.
And the story of how the sewer system came to be over multiple generations. So there's that. That's one of the shorter ones.
Oh, yeah.
There's almost a whole book within the book dedicated to Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo. All of that to set up the fact that Thénardier saved Marius's dad's life at the end of the Battle of Waterloo.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that takes up about a paragraph at the end.
That's like
this whole digression.
Wow.
But yeah, like a whole thing
I had no idea.
Into the battle, Napoleon, the French, the English, like a whole history book about the battle, leading up to a paragraph that tells you
why it's important for the story. Yeah.
This.
Fascinating.
And there are like 2 or 3 other just very lengthy digressions on something political, something socioeconomic, like just something French, you know? And they can be tough to get through.
Sure.
It helps if you know they're coming. But what I think looking back on it is that it really places you in that world in a way that is unlike anything I've ever read. Because it as an American with no cultural context for this whatsoever, I felt like I understood the things I needed to know and the history that I needed to know and the generational impact of certain things.
Sure.
In the way that I needed to as we moved through the story. Because so much of this story has to do with the generational impact that events or certain people can have on others. And I think that those large digressions on different either historical events or features of society or whatever go to set up how a situation develops over multiple generations and sets up this idea that things that seem to happen in a moment are really generations in the making. Actually, the book kind of starts with a bit of a digression. The first book of the book is dedicated to the life backstory of the bishop, right? So in the musical, the bishop gets maybe 10 minutes of stage time,
if that.
maybe.
Yeah.
A couple of songs. And basically, I mean, it's the kickoff of the whole story.
I have your soul for God.
That's basically what he does. Jean Valjean steals some stuff. He's escaped from prison.
Yeah.
And he's put up by the bishop in the cathedral. whatever. He decides, instead of like just staying there and being cool about things, he decides to steal the valuables that the bishop keeps there.
As you do.
So that he can sell them somewhere else and make some money and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He gets caught running away, and naturally the authorities bring him back to the bishop, open up the bag. He's got like the silver candlesticks and everything. And
he doesn't have the silver candlesticks because that's what he gives him.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, the other pieces of the set. So the authorities bring him back, and the bishop basically plays it off as like, oh, you left way sooner than we thought you would.
You left the best behind.
You left the best behind. And like gets the stuff that he didn't steal and gives it to him as if that was the plan all along. And then the authorities are like, wait, what? Huh?
Yeah.
So you know how in the musical there's the soliloquy, Valjean's soliloquy number. So
who's this man? What's up?
Yes. That's I think it all takes place over like
I'm sorry, I sang the wrong soliloquy.
Yeah, you did the second soliloquy.
I meant to say, what have I done, sweet Jesus? What have I done? Become a thief?
Yeah. That's pretty much the content of a chapter, a very long chapter.
And is that more internal for Valjean? Is he like
complete internal monologue? Okay. So you remember when we talked about Jane Eyre,
about that? Yeah,
great internal monologue, all of that jazz. This book has some really great moments of that as well. It's not like a consistent like through line of every moment like it is in Jane Eyre, but some really great standout moments, and this is one of them. As he's poring over his entire life and trying to make sense of how can I continue to be a bad, terrible person when I've been given so much grace and mercy. And
say that sentence again.
How can I continue to be a terrible person when I've been given so much grace and mercy? When I've experienced forgiveness that I did not deserve in any way.
Yeah.
At my lowest moment,
this complete stranger, like,
saved my life.
Yeah. Knowing that I was a criminal.
Yes.
Yeah.
With the expectation of now go and be better. And it's so impactful because you've been given this whole backstory of this person who has had impact in his community, but it was really that moment and changing Valjean that had the impact on this story, that impacts a revolution, that impacts just so much.
That's so interesting.
Forward.
Yeah.
And so it's so cool to spend all this time on the backstory of this character. And then a lot of time on Valjean trying to wrestle with who he is versus who he knows he should be. And then also having no idea how to do that.
Yeah.
So after that chapter, he kind of resolves like, yes, I will be better. And then he like, he finds, I think it's like he finds some money on the road that he sees a kid has dropped. The kid notices, he drops it. And then Valjean just like threatens him and scares him off. And then he realizes like, oh, that was wrong. Like that was not right. And then he spends the next like 3 days looking for the kid to try to return the money. And then he finds like an authority in the town. It's like, hey, took this money, like give it to this kid, blah, blah, blah. Like trying to make the mistake better, but he can't. And like, that's a huge impactful moment for him as well. And all of this serves to just wake him up and change the trajectory of his life.
Yeah.
And everything else that happens in the story happens because of that one good deed that was done to Jean Valjean that changed everything. For those who are curious about why you will hear absolutely random moments of laughter or digressions from us, it's because of a moment that was cut and several minutes of laughter that was also cut. So just bear with us if you hear a little bit of laughter here and there. Anyhow, I wanted to draw out that moment because it was really impactful to me, and his whole, basically the chapter that is Valjean's soliloquy. There were so many moments of it where I was like, "Oh my lord, that's how I think sometimes."
Yeah.
Like pondering over, why did I do the wrong thing versus I wanted to do the right thing, or how do I change for the better when I've seen or experienced this. Like there were so many moments that I related to of like, whoa, those are my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I've never been to prison, but it did such a good job of just highlighting that human struggle of wanting to be better after you've experienced grace that you don't deserve.
Yeah. And also I assume the feeling of continuing to not make those changes.
Yeah.
And still, but in your heart and mind being like, I know that I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the only other major thing I'll draw out, just because there's so much, Javert is an incredible character in the book. So Javert in the book, he's almost kind of a terrifying figure, but you get to kind of make sense of him in a way that you maybe don't in the other adaptations. Because you get to see that basically his only way of making sense of the world is through this idea of just absolute justice by the law. So even at times where it makes more sense to give someone mercy, he's just like, no, uphold the letter of the law, justice, justice, justice. But it really delves into kind of the depths of how that's in his psyche, not just, oh, he's a really by the book kind of cop.
That's who he is like,
yes. Yeah. Okay. And it takes the time to explain how that works. And so the interesting thing is, like, as he runs across Valjean early on, Valjean doesn't really disagree with his assessment. Valjean does not disagree with Javert's assessment of Valjean. But he's connected to other people and obligated to other people in ways that he's like, I just have to finish this last thing first before you take me to prison, or this kid's gonna die, or this kid's gonna starve, or stuff like that. So he's like, let me go do one more good deed before you take me to prison, and I absolutely do need to go to prison, all that kind of stuff. And so there's this. That's how the cat and mouse game continues. And in Javert's mind, it's like he's continuing to be on the run and he's continuing to elude me until it finally clicks for him that Valjean actually has changed as a person, that he is not the fundamentally criminal person that he was when the story began.
Yeah.
And he's seen that evidenced in so many different ways. And when he saves, and this isn't really a spoiler, it's a very popular story.
Yeah.
When he saves Marius from the barricade and drags him through the sewer and saves his life and everything, Valjean makes the decision, or Javert makes the decision to let Valjean go. And then you get a whole chapter. So Javert's suicide in the musical, that's a whole long chapter where he's just weighing out, like,
but he does kill himself.
Yes.
Okay.
Same result.
Question. In the musical, my favorite part of the musical is where Valjean frees Javert at the barricade. Is that in the book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Because that's my favorite part of the musical.
How he basically like convinces the revolutionaries that he wants to kill himself.
Yeah.
And then lets him go. Yes.
Okay.
That is one of the things that Javert can't make sense of.
Okay.
And so that chapter leading up to his suicide is so dense with just, it's almost like the other side of the coin to Valjean's first soliloquy. So instead of being a criminal who's been shown grace and choosing to be better, even though he doesn't know how and doesn't feel like he deserves it, Javert, who has been all about justice and doing the right thing, has been shown mercy at a time when a criminal should have, killed him.
It doesn't fit in his worldview.
It does not fit in the worldview. And so instead of choosing life and being better, he chooses death. It's a really amazing parallel, and how they're moving in complete opposite directions.
You get the sense of that in the show, in the musical, but I assume that it is much more pronounced in the book.
Much more. And just I don't know if you're like this. I think you are. For me, like, I internally wrestle with myself over so many things.
Yes.
And this book puts that at the forefront, unlike anything I've ever seen. For Valjean, for Marius, for Javert, for so many of the characters, it puts forth this really beautiful. It's like a painting of what it looks like when someone is having just inner turmoil, wrestling with a decision or a life choice or something like that. It does that expertly and beautifully. And so I would say, even if you didn't want to read the whole, freaking thing, pick out some of those chapters of inner turmoil. Since you already have the context of the show, it would make, all the major plot points anyway. But take the time to kind of just read that beautiful prose of inner turmoil on some of these characters, because it's really, really impactful in a lot of ways.
I'll tell you, going into this, I knew you were going to talk about this book, and I was not 100% like, oh, I want to read that.
Yeah.
I do want to read it now. So you've convinced me that I want to read it more than I had before. Personally, I'm not put off by the page count of the book, so I think that I definitely will check it out soon.
Love it.
Yeah, maybe in the next year. Maybe next year.
There, okay. Yeah, there it
maybe
is.
not this year. But I got a lot of books to read this year.
Yeah.
One book that I had on my TBR for a long, long time.
It really has been.
Was Legends and Lattes by Travis Balter. And guess what?
Did you read it?
Yes, I did. I did read it, Stephen, and I loved it.
Nice.
Okay. So, do you know anything about the book?
Yeah, I do. I started it a couple years ago.
Yeah. You didn't like it?
I just didn't finish it. It was begun as a buddy read, and then it didn't continue as a buddy read, and I forgot to keep reading.
You hated it so much, and you just didn't like it?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. That's just what I was getting from your aura, but it's
dude, my aura is all over the place right now.
I know. So I loved it. And so to give you kind of a primer, and I know you said you read the beginning, but for those at home, the story follows Viv, who is an orc, who, does what orcs do in these fantasy settings a lot of times, and pillaging, plundering, being mercenary, generally just killing people, and doing a lot of murder. And I think this is an interesting concept that I really enjoy when it's explored in books. Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose do this really well, where they take fantastical tropes like, oh, orc bad, or like monster bad, and kind of subvert it to be like, well, maybe not always, like, and that's something that I find to be really interesting with more modern fantasy, kind of taking that approach towards not every monster is bad. And it's very interesting. And so this is, I think, a good example of that, where Viv is just a normal person trying to make ends meet, doing their thing, what they're good at, and they stop wanting to do that. And you know me, and you know that I love a story of somebody who has decided they want to change a path and want to do something else. One of my favorite books of this year has been, or two books really, was the Monk and the Robot duology. Kind of similar vibes here a little bit.
I could see that.
Very much so. In those books, Sibling Dex is doing this one thing, and they decide they want to do another thing, and they go on this huge journey, and it's full of philosophical questions and real existential dread. This is not that.
Yeah.
This is certainly not that in the same way. So Viv decides that she wants to open a coffee shop She had been to a coffee shop in this dwarven city and loved it. It was not something that she had ever had before, so she wanted to make her own store. So she buys this place in this town that's run down. It used to be like a livery. That's a horse place, right?
Yep.
Livery.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So it used to be a livery, and she finds people to help her start this thing. When I was reading it, I kept kind of wondering, well, where is the conflict?
Yeah, like something awful is about to happen.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I think for me, this book was maybe more of an exercise in being okay when things are not bad. This is getting a little personal here, but I kind of I do a lot in my life to mitigate chaos and mitigate stress. I feel those things very strongly when they do happen. And so I try really hard to make them not happen.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when I read books, it's books where those things are happening. And for some reason that gives me a sense of control over this like chaotic world.
Right.
Which is really interesting. And it's something that I've been kind of working through in therapy and figuring out kind of what that's about. This, when I was reading it, I was like, all right, I'm on edge reading this cozy fantasy. What is that about? And there is conflict and there is like stuff that happens, but it's not on the large scale.
Right.
And so I think part of this experience for me was really eye-opening just on a personal level. I was like, well, why am I it's almost like I want something bad to happen to these characters, like, because that would make it make sense to me. But it doesn't really. And when it does, it's fixed.
Right.
Like they fix it. Like they work together. And it's interesting. I've gone through some pretty major life changes where I've, taken a different path than what was maybe expected of me or what I had been doing. And Travis Baldree really captures that really well. The doubt that creeps in when you do things like that, or the fear that you have that, well, what if I'm making the wrong choice? Even if it's something you really want to do or something you feel really strongly about, some people just, and I'm one of them, just has a really heightened radar for bad things to happen. And so it's like they capture that really well in the story. And it's also, you read a story about somebody starting a coffee shop and you're like, well, what's the point? And I think that maybe in itself is the point of the book. Because you do have a plot, right? And I guess I didn't expect going into it that there would be an actual plot. I really didn't know what to expect. But it's just fun and things work out. And that's like, things work out for Viv generally.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And the one thing that really stuck out to me about this was it also, does a really good job of highlighting the importance of having people in your life, who you care about and who care about you. Because when stuff does go wrong, and it will, things aren't always going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And the importance of having a support system is paramount to your ability to get through those things.
Would you say that, in a lot of fantasy, it's like, it's building toward this, like, ultimate awful thing that has to be overcome. And oftentimes you'll even get it where, you have a main character who has to, like, build their whole life for a season around overcoming that major obstacle, fighting that war, defeating this ultimate evil, whatever. And in this case, it's almost more of like in those cases, it's inspirational, or aspirational, and in this case, it's almost more realistic in that, like, if you set up your daily life in this very sustainable way, you can overcome the types of regular challenges that will come your way.
That I think that is a good way to describe this. because the challenge that they face is irregular.
Mm-hmm.
It is not normal. Like what happens is not something that happens to people every day,
Mm-hmm.
but they have set up their lives in a way that they have the people around them to make that less scary.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when it does happen, they don't do most of the work. It's the people around them who are lifting them up.
Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting because a lot of times people feel like they're a burden when they ask for help, or like they're a burden when something goes wrong and they need help to fix it. This book does a really good job of making sure that the main character, although they may feel that way, that's not a pressure that they're getting from anybody else. That is them. Right? It's putting that pressure on themselves, and that's realistic. That is real.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I don't know, man. I think it does. It's such a good, happy, inspiring read that I think you would really, really like it.
Yeah.
I feel like I recommend a lot of books that are heavy and brutal, and you know, like just like with like an edge to them that is darker.
Yeah.
Because I generally like that. But this was such a breath of fresh air. Into an otherwise pretty, like, I was reading the Greenbone Saga when I was reading this as well. Two honestly could not be more different books, or worlds or vibes. This was just a fun read. And I would really recommend it for this season and in like the fall. Things are, you know, dying. The leaves are dying. The things are getting a little bit more chilled out. I think that this is a great thing to read because the beginning of the book is kind of a lull for Viv. Things are, you know, things are chill. They're stressful because they're doing a new thing, but nothing crazy's happening. But every time, it's just life that something is going to happen. Something crazy will happen. You know that. I know that. But it's good to, in the moments where we are not experiencing those like drastic, life-changing things, to sit and realize that we are in the moments that will get us through the next hard thing. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because when we think about when we're in the middle of a difficult thing, it's often not, well, when I get to the other side of this, things will be completely different. It'll be, well, when I get to the other side of this, things will be like they were. And things will be like they were when this was happening. Not to be like, well, I want to go back in the past, but just like I want these things that I care so deeply about to happen again.
Yeah.
And so like I think that's just a good reminder that if you keep the people that you love in your life at their where they're respected and feel the love from you as well, you will always have a support system that will help you build those memories and those moments that you'll look back when things are hard.
Yeah.
I think it's just a book about an orc serving lattes, but it's also a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think you'd really enjoy it. And if you don't enjoy it for all those reasons, it's just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really all I got.
Nice.
Yeah. I will say though, that's actually not all I got. There's one more thing that I think is really interesting about the story, and it kind of puts Viv's character a little bit more into perspective. It's her attachment to her sword that she used when she was a mercenary. She very obviously has a difficult time kind of moving past her old self. And I think that we do this a lot of times in our lives where we hang on to like heirlooms or keepsakes from a time in our life that we do wish that we could kind of move past. But there's just a sentimental attachment to those things that often keeps us more kind of entrenched in that time than we would like to be.
Yeah.
And I think that just creates an interesting thing here because she actually uses that to her advantage in the story because it's scary to the people who live there. So she, even though she is trying to get away from the scary orc thing, it's the advice given to her to keep out, kind of this gang in the area, is to display it and to make sure that everybody knows that she's dangerous.
Right.
And while she's doing that and also trying to move past her old self, it's really difficult to do both of those things.
Yeah.
To keep things around that remind us of things that we would like to forget. And so it's difficult to do that without getting rid of those things.
Right.
And so something happens and it ends up like that is no longer an issue. And at the end of the book, she very much has. That's kind of a spoiler. Let me start again. So throughout the book, she kind of wrestles with that. And I think that just adds another element of realism to the story, which is funny to say about a book about an orc selling lattes. Realism is not really a huge factor here.
Yeah.
But it just creates a really interesting and believable character.
Right.
And I think that is all I have to say about that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna come back to it at some point.
Yeah,
for sure.
I really would.
I enjoy that description of it.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, and I think it's more than just a silly little book about lattes.
Yeah.
But that's just maybe I'm the only one who thinks that, and everybody's just like, "Oh, this is great," because I do that. But that's just my opinion.
I don't even know. I was gonna say something clever and I couldn't get there.
It's been a long day.
It's been a long day, brother.
Long 2 hours recording this thing.
Yes.
I think we're about done here.
I think so. If you are still by some magic here, even though it will probably
won't feel
down
like
to 55 minutes.
It won't feel crazy for you.
I
hope.
Like, subscribe, share, reach out to us on the socials.
Let us know what you think about these books.
Love to talk to y'all about the things. Thank you for listening, watching, doing your thing.
And I'll say Steve and I also have personal bookstagrams. I'm on TikTok. So if you want to, reach out to us there as well.
Yes.
We do some kind of collaborative content there as well. Would love to connect with you there as well.
Yeah. I think at this point, it's when we say...
Hold on, wait. Okay. Sorry.
I think at this point, we say...
Now this is podcasting.
And that's it.
Yeah.